Oxygen Blast technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Now, as far as that CLR is concerned, again, typically he's kind of out of sight, out of mind. He's just the guy in the background doing all the hard work when it comes to managing memory and executing our code. But if you ever wanted to kind of point to the CLR, there's actually a library called MS Core EE, the execution engine, right? This is what gets loaded up transparently in the background when a .NET program starts up. Now, what does this CLR going to be doing for us? Well, he's basically a manager, right? And that's where we get that term you might have heard of before, manage code, right? It's just that the CLR is kind of micromanaging your program to make sure things are all good. But another part of the CLR is this humongous library of code that you can use from any .NET language that you want. So we don't have, for example, a C# library and then a Visual Basic library. We just have a whole bunch of assemblies that can be used by any language. And that goes by a couple of different terms. Some programmers use the term framework class library. Some use the term base class libraries. You can kind of pick your poison there. So here's how things kind of look from that high level point of view. You are here. You're writing some sort of an application, and your application will be interacting with the base class libraries to do anything useful. Now, there is one particular library that you always get, even if you don't explicitly say you want it, and that's called MS Core Lib, right? The core library. And this just contains all of the things you need to do anything useful, like all the fundamental data types. Let's go take a look at it real quick. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to go over here to this area of Visual Studio called the Solution Explorer. See this little folder right here called References? This will just show you all the libraries that you're currently making use of. Now we don't see MS Core Lib listed here, but remember he's the one you always have, so it's kind of assumed. So if I were to go to my object browser, I can see MS Core Lib. And if I look down here, I can see a physical path to that library. Now, always remember that an assembly is the physical DLL or EXE somewhere on your computer. Well, internal to any assembly, we're going to have a series of namespaces. And all a namespace is just a way to sort of organize all the different types. Classes, interfaces, structures, enums, delegates. They're all going to be organized by these different namespaces. So why don't we open up MS Core Lib here. Now notice the one-to-many relationship, right? This one physical DLL has been partitioned into a large number of different namespaces. You can see that system is what we call a root namespace. So if we were to go inside of here, I could find the integer, right? I can see that integer extends something called value type, which is an object. Now notice that namespaces are very self-describing, right? So there's no mystery. If you are looking for a collection, you know to go to system.collections and his family members, right? If you're trying to do something with file I/O, go to system.io. So this is really where a .NET programmer spends most of their time, right? Learning the syntax of C# is not going to be your biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle for sure is trying to learn all of the different types we can make use of from the base class libraries. And I'll show you the help system here in just a little bit to kind of give you a taste of what this all looks like. But again, just to kind of recap this here, remember that the assembly, let's look at a different one here, like system.xml.dll. That's the assembly. Has a collection of different namespaces. Each namespace has a collection of types. Right? And we'll talk about that distinction in a little more detail coming up in just a second. All right. So here's this whole idea of the namespace again. This is just kind of a conceptual container, right? Similar to the Java package idea, but like I mentioned already, there's no class path. You don't have to worry about a particular folder substructure that your program has to be organized inside of. You could just have all of your assemblies in one big folder. You could take the folder and zip it up, plop it on a hard drive, extract it, run the program, right? No necessary setup programs in many cases. You can just do an Xcopy deployment. Now, when you are writing code and you want to use something which is part of a different namespace, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. So maybe I'll flip back to Visual Studio again. Let's just take a look at that initial C# file. Now, did you notice when I was typing this code, the editor sort of automatically knew what a console was? It automatically knew what int32 was. In fact, I don't even have to say system if I don't want to. I could just say int32 like that. The reason is because, I'll show you right here, there is a root namespace called system. Okay? We saw that back in the object browser. So, if you want to use the console, first thing you have to understand is, well, which namespace is the console inside of? Once you understand that, the next question is, well, which library has that namespace? Now, of course, there is no magic bullet. Nobody just has this whole framework memorized. And that's why we have a really nice help system. But look at the top here. Okay? You see all these using statements? This is a way for you to basically tell the compiler, if you see something that I've typed, such as console, and I did not directly create it myself, try to resolve it by prefixing these namespace names. Right? So, if I were to delete or comment out using system, now look at this, right? Now the compiler is very confused. We can already see the red squiggles. It says, well, I don't know what these things are anymore. Well, that's because I didn't specify that namespace. Now, if you wanted to, you could do this. You notice what I'm going to do here? Oops. I'm going to actually prefix in front of the type the namespace that he lives inside of. Okay, we call that the fully qualified name. Definitely requires more typing, right? So most programmers aren't going to want to do that unless they have a name clash. But as far as performance or code size, there's no difference. So I can still run the program, get the same output. Now here's a little reminder again. Remember, any .NET language can use any kind of keywords they want. So in C#, we would say using. Visual Basic has a keyword called imports for the same general idea. And then here's just one more example. Let's say that you wanted to make use of a non-generic collection type called the array list. Well, he's inside of a whole different namespace called system.collections. So then I'll have to either have a using directive up here, or I'd have to use a fully qualified name here and here. Now here on the screen, this is just a very, very high level look at a couple of common namespaces. And trust me, there are many more than this. I just wanted to give you kind of a sampling of what you can do. And I'll show you the help system next here. But notice how we have a number of assemblies and namespaces just for database interactions. We have support for security, multi-threading. One cool feature of .NET 4.0 is something called the Task Parallel Library. And that's where you can run code throughout multiple cores. That's a very slick little system.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.